Hey, everybody, this is Caryn.
And this is Jill.
And you're listening to Scream Girl Squad. Because that's definitely our theme song. Why did we even buy a theme song? Why didn't we just have you
Because whenever I'm with you, all I want to go sing is the da 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 da. But we're not driving.
It's because you're invincible when that music is playing.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how bad of a driver you are.
It's best when you're doing something dumb.
It's a little bit later than usual on a Tuesday.
So I'm a little punch drunk.
Yeah.
There's going to be lots of singing random crap.
You wouldn't think an hour would make this much difference, but...
Listen, it does. I'm old.
It really does.
You sugared me up.
Well, you know, so we could ride that nice sugar high. Plus, we're recording this on Fat Tuesday. Tomorrow is Ash Wednesday. It's the beginning of Lent. By the time you hear this, it will be my third day with no candy. So...
Good luck.
We'll see. We'll see if I make it to Easter. This is a hard time of year to give up candy because Easter candy is the best.
The best candy. Mm-hmm. I thought about doing something for Lent instead of giving something up, like adding something to my life. Because I like the whole Lent thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's cool. But I don't know. I haven't picked anything, so I better do it before tomorrow.
In years past, I tried to give up things that were less tangible and were more things that I felt like added negativity to my life. So I would try to give up thinking negative thoughts, or I would try to give up talking about my problems, like in a negative way, you know, like a difference between venting and just dwelling.
Right.
But I got to get my sugar habit under control. So this year it's back to 13-year-old Caryn's Lent goals.
Yes.
And we'll see how well she does. But in the meantime, we're going to have to find some other tasty things to judge our movies by.
I love fruit.
All right.
And vegetables.
Okay.
I'm totally that person. So
it's going to be an unusually healthy 30 days of Scream Girl Squad.
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So, for Fat Tuesday, Jill and I spent a while going through that process that you have to go through sometimes of finding a freaking movie to watch.
It did take us a little bit of a long time.
Yeah.
To be fair, we assigned Caryn's husband Kelly to pick a movie. And so he, of course, did not. And then we had to do it anyway. We knew when we said it, he wouldn't do it.
Yes, we were
But
really
it was
hoping.
still a fun try.
Because we have a really nice list of recommendations that other people have made. But it's kind of like a book recommendation. You have to be in the right mood to actually pick it up.
Yeah.
And I was in a very particular and specific mood today. And I wanted to find a movie with exactly the right kinds of like supernatural elements. Mm-hmm. And we did find one. So we ended up watching Don't Knock Twice on Netflix. This came out in 2016.
I never heard of it.
I never heard of it either. So Don't Knock Twice, for other people that missed it, is about a mom who has just barely kind of gotten her life together, and she's trying to reconnect with her estranged daughter, whose age I could not figure out for the whole entire movie.
She's a teenager, for sure.
Between 16 and 18, I guess.
I would say somewhere between 15 and 18.
Yeah.
Because she was definitely an older teenager, but not old enough to be on her own.
Yeah, for sure.
So
she's exactly at that point where you're rebellious and you're...
Yeah. I didn't get the impression that she's driving or anything. I would honestly say probably 15 or 16.
Yeah, sure. So, mom's name is Jess. She's trying to reconnect with her daughter, Chloe. And Chloe has been living in a children's home for maybe the last 9 years. So, Jess is trying to reconnect with Chloe, but Chloe is super convinced that this supernatural entity has murdered her friend and is coming for Chloe next. So that kind of complicates their attempts to reunite as a family. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Lots of good family drama. Some familiar faces. Jess, the mom, is played by Katie Sackhoff from Battlestar Galactica. And I have to say, her performance in this movie was awesome.
It was really good. I never watched Battlestar Galactica, as we talked about before we watched the movie, but I thought she was good.
Yeah. She's definitely grown as a performer since Battlestar Galactica, which came out a pretty long time ago.
She was in Riddick.
What? Who does she play in Riddick?
Somebody named Dahl? D-A-H-L?
What?
Mm-hmm. Oculus. Didn't I see Oculus?
She's in Oculus?
I know, right? Marie Russell. I don't even know.
Huh.
She voiced someone in Clone Wars.
All right. Mostly,
she's been all over the place.
Mostly I know her as Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
But she was seriously great. We'll talk in the actual spoilers section about some of my favorite moments that she did, but there were multiple scenes within this movie where she just blew me away with how authentic she seemed. So she's the mom. Chloe is played by Lucy Boynton. She was in Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh,
yeah.
She is the girl in Bohemian Rhapsody. I did not put that together.
I had to look it up.
Okay.
Because she looked so familiar. Her performance was great as well. And then there's also Nick Moran, who is in one of my all-time favorite movies, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. And it took me the majority of this movie to figure out it was him. Because, again, quite a bit of time has passed.
I've seen that, and I don't remember him.
So he's Eddie in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Yeah.
He's the one that's the card shark that they've pinned all their hopes on.
Yeah. He's also someone in Harry Potter.
Yeah, he plays... He has
Scabior?
Yeah.
Is that the werewolf guy?
He's like the buddy of the werewolf guy. He wears kind of this weird neck scarf.
Yes.
And he's obsessed with Hermione.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, he's been around. Good cast. That's pretty much the core of the movie, is these three characters and some other folks running around. But
yeah.
So as I mentioned, I am trying to give up candy. So Jill and I didn't buy any candy on purpose.
So that it wouldn't be left here.
Yes, exactly. Because that's a problem. And then I eat it constantly. So that complicates things a little bit for our rating method.
But we did drink orange Fanta. Mm-hmm. So we're not completely desolate. That's the word I'm looking for.
Sure.
So for those of you who are new to the podcast or don't remember or just like to hear me talk about stuff,
like me.
We rate the podcast on 2 scales, fright factor and enjoyability. So fright factor we base on something from the movie, and enjoyability we base on something we enjoyed during the movie, snack-wise. So enjoyability, this week we're going to use orange Fanta, because it's the best Fanta.
Oh, easily.
Soda, in general, it's up there with my top 5, probably.
Yeah, second only to orange Cass, which you can't get here, and it's a shame.
Yeah, I don't know. I was like, I don't know what that is.
This is amazing orange soda that every time I'm in Spain, I'm like, give me all the Cass. I'm buying like 15 liters at the grocery store.
Someday I just need to go to Spain with you.
Fact.
You may have to dope me up to get me over the ocean, but we can do that.
Oh, me too. After what happened the last time I was on a transoceanic flight, you and me are both going to be forcing ourselves to sleep. Yeah.
Just make Kelly watch over us while we're both like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're in the States, Fanta is one of the
Fanta
key
is
ways to
great.
go.
So we had orange Fanta. So Caryn, on a scale of 1 to 5 orange Fantas, we just missed the perfect opportunity to say, sometimes I get nervous on airplanes. Sorry.
It's true. Okay, I have to leave that in because we are required by law to reference John Mulaney at least once every podcast. So that's staying.
That reminds me. Did you know they're making a new Cinderella movie? Because of course they are. It's been like 3 years. And all of these really fun people in it, but John Mulaney is one of them.
Really? Who's
He's going to play, I want to say like one of the mice or a footman or something.
Until you said John Mulaney, I was opposed to this idea.
But James Corden is also going to be in it, and Billy Porter and Idina Menzel. I think Billy Porter is playing the fairy godmother, which I think is so incredible.
That's awesome. So where are we?
I'm so all over the place today. We were going to rate this.
In it.
I hope not. Or I'm not. No, caffeine free.
We did get fooled by that orange, or no, that
Crush.
Red. Yeah, the ruby
Orange
red
Crush
squirt.
Oh, yeah, Ruby Red Squirt had caffeine in it.
Yeah.
But I think Orange Crush, too, sometimes has.
What the crap? Consistency, people.
I know.
All right.
Bark Trooper. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't.
So weird.
It's like in the 2 liters there's caffeine and in the little ones there's not, or something stupid. Anyway, we're rating this movie. Caryn, on a scale, focus. Ready? Look at me.
All right, eyes up here.
Scale of 1 to 5 orange Fantas. How much did you enjoy this movie?
I gotta average it down to a 3.
Okay, that's where I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because as we were going along, I was like, this is going to be a 4.
Yeah, this
or
is
like
great.
a 5.
It's so great, yeah.
And then the more the movie went on, I was like, oh no, it's a 3.
There was a pretty stark
Yeah.
line of delineation.
Oh, yeah.
There
is a full separation of good movie versus not good movie.
Yeah.
And it is a solid line, and
Yeah.
you know the second you pass it.
It's the first 2 acts are great.
Yeah.
And the 3rd act is very confusing.
Very confusing.
Strange.
And we'll get into it, but
Yeah.
it was not okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
To go from being so good to so weird is rough. Yeah.
So 3.
3.
Yeah.
3 orange Fantas. We are in agreement.
I definitely still recommend people watch it.
Oh, for sure. And please explain the ending to us if you can.
I mostly get the more distance between me and it, I think the more I'm...
We'll talk it out, and I might feel better about it. Yeah.
But there is so much magic right in the middle of the movie. Some great scenes that are totally worth watching. And plus it's free.
Right?
So,
And it was really well done.
Yeah.
So,
and Katie Sackhoff's performance alone is worth watching. So,
really, really good.
So, solid 3.
Solid 3. Fright factor. Demon ladies.
Demon ladies.
Demon ladies.
Mm-hmm.
Out of 5 demon ladies, how scared were you?
Man, solid 3 on that too.
I was going to say the same thing because I wasn't... Listen, I'm going to be nervous walking to my car, but I'll sleep tonight. So for me, that's a 3.
Yeah. Well, and I think it would have been higher on the fright factor if that 3rd act hadn't totally confused me so much, because it robbed it of a lot of its terror.
Mm-hmm.
Because instead of feeling afraid, I was feeling confused.
Yeah.
But for sure, there was so many good, scary moments until that point.
Absolutely. I, just for full disclosure, totally jumped, squealed. I wouldn't say screamed, gasped loudly.
Yeah, she made a...
Yeah. Yep, and I definitely jumped. Like, the cat sitting near me was not okay. So
I was worried about you too, because I felt a jump scare coming, and I looked over and you had your pen right up against your face. And I was like, oh gosh, I hope she doesn't get scared and jab herself or something. And I do that to myself too. If I'm in a movie theater, I tend to feel much more frightened, and I'll have my hands up by my face, and I'll feel a jump scare coming, and I'll force myself to put my hands under my thighs because I'm worried I'm going to punch myself in the face.
I've punched other people, so that's a fair thing to worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to know yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, solid movie all around. The scary scenes, apart from the
Really
3rd act,
scary.
were really scary.
Yep.
Definitely recommended.
We wanted to watch something actually scary because, as those of you listening know, it's been a while since we've seen something that actually scared us.
Yeah.
And we kind of watching more funny than scary recently. And so it was good to actually get some scares.
And we were talking about it before we started watching the movie. I've become concerned that the older I get, the more difficult it will be for me to feel scared in a movie, because it's harder to suspend your disbelief. Mm-hmm. It's harder to let yourself get lost in the moment. But this managed to do it. So Thank you, Don't Knock Twice, for restoring my faith in my ability to feel afraid.
Absolutely. Well, and I was worried, is it because we're taking notes while we're watching the movie? Is that taking me out of it? Nope. None of that came into play tonight.
Yeah.
So.
And actually, if you look at my notes, usually I stay pretty close on the blue line on the paper. But this one, I was so afraid to look away that there's all these, lines that cross each other because I'm writing without looking, and the handwriting's getting worse and worse and crossing on top of everything else. So,
Scrabble.
So I think that's a good sign.
Yep. Agreed.
Well, let's get in.
Let's do it. I want to talk about it. Let's go.
All right. Spoilers.
Okay. So the movie starts out with a woman named Jess, and she's talking to a room full of people, and she's saying, I just want her to come live with me. I'm better now. I can take care of her, yada, yada, trying to convince these people that her daughter can come stay with her. Mm-hmm. So then her teenage daughter, Chloe, comes in, and it's real awkward. Yeah. Chloe wants none of it.
Yep. She says right there in front of the social worker and everything, I needed you 9 years ago, and you didn't want me then. Yeah. So I don't want you now.
Yeah. I don't need you anymore. See you later.
Yep.
Peace out, basically. She's clearly an angry child who wears a lot of eyeliner. You know the type. No, just it doesn't have anything to do with anything. But I feel like they dressed her up in the way that stereotypically makes you think troubled youth.
Oh, I loved all of her shirts.
It was completely Caryn when we were in high school. So, yeah, troubled youth wardrobe.
She's wearing this amazing shirt that has like a monster hand on it, and the monster hand is flipping off the person looking at the shirt.
And she's got like this flannel shirt over the top. Her hair's all cute and curly with like these braids, and she's got heavy eyeliner. She looks great, to be honest with you. It's like
teenage
90s dreams
Caryn
come
wanted
true.
to believe her, 100%.
For sure. Yeah. So yeah, she looks really cute, but yeah, she was having none of it. She was just like, nope, I want to live with my mom. Mm-hmm. See you later. Walks out.
Yep. So Jess, played by Katie Sackhoff, and her husband, who I got the clear impression was not Chloe's dad.
Yeah.
Because all the tension in the room was Chloe and Jess, and her husband, Ben, was just sort
of kind of a side piece. Yeah.
I'm over here.
And was just kind of like, you guys do what you need to do. I'm just good with whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So they establish right after that Jess is a sculptor. And she has the sculpting studio that kind of looks like an old rectory or an old church.
It does. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, stained glass windows on the wall. And she's doing portrait sculpting. So there's a customer there who's holding her baby. And Jess is sculpting the customer and the baby out of clay. And that's pretty rad.
Yeah, I'm not an artist. I'm not familiar with art in any way, shape, or form. But to sculpt live people seems extremely difficult to me.
Yes.
I feel like any other sculptor I've ever known or like seen or read about does it from pictures.
Yeah.
Because sculpting is really hard and people move. And
yeah. I think it would be exhausting enough to sit for a portrait, let alone stand there holding a baby.
For however long while somebody sculpts. Yeah, that sounds exhausting. So I found that impressive.
Yeah.
On all sides. So the customer, whose name is Tia.
Tira?
The model customer, Tira lady, says, I'm sorry about your daughter. At some point, the mom is kind of turned away from her, and she sneaks up behind her and puts a necklace around her. Mm-hmm. And she's just like, here, just a little something to make you feel better, or something. I can't remember how she says it. So protect you or give you strength through these times. I don't remember how she says it, but here's a gift.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Difference.
Then it flashes back to the daughter, Chloe, and her friend, Danny. And they are just kind of hanging out at the home.
Yeah, they see some kids knocking on a neighbor's door and running away giggling. And the neighbor's like, you blasted kids, get away from get off my lawn. And Danny's like, hey, remember when we were little kids and we used to do the same thing? So clearly Danny and Chloe have been friends since they were children, growing up together in this children's home. And he takes her to one of the creepiest little houses you've ever seen.
Seriously, creepiest little house you've ever seen. A bunch of windows are like falling out and it's clearly abandoned.
Yeah, it's all gray and sooty and gross and weird too because it's set apart by itself and then there's been all this development around it. So it's this old creepy abandoned house that has a freeway interchange right behind it.
Yeah, and it's like sort of on the edge of a river or anyway, it's like isolated but in the middle of everything all at the same time. Yeah. Very interesting.
It had kind of an otherworldly feel because of that. Yeah. So Danny tells Chloe, hey, you know about this house, right? That the lady that lived here was super evil and took children, and if you knock twice on her door, she'll get you.
And Chloe's like, she took Michael.
Yeah.
Like,
they're standing there, and the front door is covered by a steel outer door.
Yeah, like a storm door, but with no screen.
And that creaks open mysteriously, revealing a really old blackened wooden door with an old-fashioned brass knocker in the shape of a goat's head with these menacingly sharp horns. Mm-hmm. And that's what Danny uses to knock twice on the door. And he says you knock once to wake her up and twice to summon her. Yeah. So, of course, Chloe has to do the same thing and knock on it, too.
Right. Because that's how peer pressure works.
Yep, pretty much.
Caryn would have made me knock twice on stuff, I'm sure.
Probably. Not twice, though. Who knocks twice?
Yeah, we would have knocked like 27 times.
Yeah.
What happens if you knock more than twice? She go back into her hole?
I was thinking about this for the majority of this entire scene. Never once in my life have I knocked twice.
Da, 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 da.
Yeah, like knocking like a normal person. Always 3 times.
You know, Kelly's going to come check on you now, right?
Nothing.
He's going to go answer the door. I think he answered the door. You should tell him.
I was demonstrating that you never knock twice. That was me knocking.
I was like, Kelly's going to come to the door. Jill wins. He went to the door.
I feel so terrible. I'm such a troll of a wife.
He's fine. He laughed.
He had like a sock in his hand. He was going to go open the door. So, the next scene is this kind of long camera moment where the camera is twirling and twirling and twirling towards Freedom, towards this apartment door, which when it goes through it, you realize it's Danny's apartment.
Yeah.
Which
I thought was interesting that he's in an apartment.
Oh, maybe he's older than Chloe.
That's true. He could be older and...
Yeah. But as it's getting closer, the lights are flashing off. It's very clear. Spookiness is happening.
Yeah. When the light's flashing and all that kind of stuff. So he's inside his apartment and hears something at the door, right? So
he hears 2 knocks.
He goes and looks out the peephole and the lights are flashing and there's like a figure standing at the end of the hall.
Yeah.
And
I think so.
In the movie, gave me
deja vu.
Right?
I figured it out. It's in Lights Out. The way that they did.
Oh, maybe
this shot. It was very similar to the very first scene in Lights Out.
I think it also reminded me of not Scary Stories, but another one we watched recently. Maybe it was Scary Stories, and he hides under the bed.
Yeah, the lady.
I think there was a scene where she was standing in the hall.
It's honestly
common shot. Really common shot, but it just gave me flashbacks of all the movies we've been watching lately. So.
Yeah. What?
There's a car and it's lights and shadows.
Okay.
It's fine.
You did what my cats do all the time, and you just look very suddenly in a direction and
the
nothing
car
at all.
is driving really slow down the road, and it's like the shadows were moving really slowly.
Jill is so jumpy.
This movie scared me.
Okay, this scene was like the first really good scary scene.
We're talking about the scary part.
Yeah.
So anyway, the lights flash. The lady is in the hall. Lights flash. She's closer.
Yeah.
And he's and backs away from the door. And while he does that, his apartment goes dark. And I can barely talk. His apartment goes dark. And you see the lights flash, and behind him, she's standing in the corner of his apartment.
Yeah. And
he turns around and you can kind of see, how it was totally a night terrors scene where you see a person in the dark, but you're like, no, it's not a person. You try to convince yourself it's not a person.
But you can see the edge of their face.
But you can see a person. Yeah. So you could see the person, but you weren't really sure if you could see the person. And she was standing there and and then she whispered, run, get out of here, or something. I can't remember what she says.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. And you're just like, okay, run. Everything in your body is like, run. And
so then he reaches over and turns on a desk lamp.
Oh, that's right.
And
he turns on the desk lamp and she's gone.
Yeah.
Which is what happens when you have night terrors. You're like, oh, okay, she's not really there. Cool. Okay.
And then sudden noise. Jess is calling with a Skype FaceTime thing. Do I need to close that?
Yes! Why are cars driving so slow and creepily down the road?
All right, hang on. Let me take care of this. Jill Will's rear windowing the neighbors.
It's really scary. That's much better. Thank you.
All right.
This is not going to be productive if we didn't do that.
All right. So Chloe is calling him from like a FaceTime or Skype or something.
Yeah.
And he sits down to talk to her, and right as he does, you hear 2 knocks on her end of the call. And she says, oh, hang on 1 second, stands up. And as soon as she steps away, you see from her computer's perspective, his door open behind him, and he gets dragged out of the room.
And it's like choppy, but you can tell he's just like, rah, and gets dragged out of the room. And she comes back and he's just gone.
Yeah. And it focuses on her computer, and then another jump scare. He's back for like a minute, just his mouth screaming.
Yeah.
Honestly, the first part of this scene, super good and scary. The second part, I just kept thinking Unfriended did it better.
Yeah.
But that scene in Unfriended was so effective that it was uncomfortable to watch, and this one was toned down enough that I didn't feel like I needed to pause it and take a break. So
yeah. But it did make me want to continue watching this movie, so that was cool.
For sure.
Chloe tries all the next day to get a hold of Danny and can't get a hold of him. Can't reach him. He won't answer his phone, which I get the impression is not normal.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there's those people you can't talk to. But her not being able to talk to him was not normal. Mm-hmm. She is like in the home and she's in the kitchen all by herself. And the lights all go out and it's really scary.
And she gets a text message from Danny that's a picture of her own back standing at the sink in this little kitchen.
Yeah. And so she like whips around. No one's there. Like the door's shut. There's nobody standing there. And I think someone knocks the door.
2 knocks.
2 knocks.
Always 2 knocks.
Always 2 knocks. And so somebody knocks the door and then the lights all go out, I think. And so she's standing there in the dark and there's just the light coming in like from the kitchen window.
Yeah.
And as the light comes in the window, you see someone crawling out of the sink in this like unholy, long, creepy black fingers like coming out of the sink.
Yeah.
And she just starts screaming bloody murder because how do you not?
Yeah. Appropriate reaction.
Yeah. She is hysterically screaming. And one of the guys who runs the home like breaks down the door and he's like, Chloe, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And she turns around and everything's fine.
Yep.
And so she just runs off. And he's just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Her mom and her husband are just asleep in bed. Mm-hmm. And they hear knocking. Normal knocking. Not 2 knocks. Wild knocking at the front door. And they go down the stairs. And her husband's like, hang on. And like grabs a boot next to this door before they open the door because he's like ready to defend them with a floppy boot. It was just
so
hysterical.
hilarious.
It was really cute. And they open the door and it's Chloe. And they're like, Chloe, what are you doing here? And she's just like, can I stay with you?
Yeah.
And they're like, of course you can, but we have to call the home.
Yep.
Because I get the impression that there's a lot of legalese about it and the home's not very trusting of the mom.
Mm-hmm. And they don't tell you why for a while.
Yeah. And so they're like, she's like, we have to make sure they know that you're here and that you're safe and they're okay with it. So they let her stay with them. They have a whole room ready for her. And as the mom's showing her the room, she's like, we're hoping that you would like pick a paint color and make it your own. And she's like, I'm not staying. Mm-hmm. Like, just to be clear, Jess, she calls her Jess the whole time.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, Jess, I'm not staying. I'm just here for the night or whatever. Yeah. Maybe a couple days.
Yeah.
And her mom's just like, okay.
Yeah.
And she goes to leave and Chloe says, leave the door open. And you can just tell she's scared. And the whole time I was like, these adults know something is up, but they don't know what it is. Yeah. Like, she is clearly a distressed child with something happened to, and they don't know what it is, and they're just trying to make a safe space for her.
And with a teenager, it could be anything. It could be the whole scale from genuinely something life-alteringly bad is happening to...
my boyfriend won't call me back.
Yep.
Or
my best friend stabbed me in the back. Something like that. Yeah. So
she wore the same sweater as me, and I can't go to school again.
So they are trying to walk that line between giving you space, being supportive. What do you need? And you totally get the impression that Jess kind of doesn't even know how to do that because she hasn't been a mom in 10 years.
Yeah. So she's kind of just like, okay, then see you later.
Yeah.
Like, and there's clearly awkwardness there where they don't really know each other.
Yeah. So they both did a really good job kind of portraying all of those different emotions in this scene.
Yep. They're all sitting down to dinner having soup.
Mm-hmm.
Carrot soup. So it was like really thick.
And orange.
Yeah. And did not look good.
Just the color you want in all your soups. Like bright orange.
Well, and carrot and coriander soup, which coriander is like cilantro. They're like the same.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't cook.
So
I'm a very bad cook.
I don't know. There's like a slight difference, but not much of it. So like that's a really interesting flavor to me. I'm curious about carrot and coriander soup. Anyway.
Sounds delightful.
Yeah. So she makes soup. It's really thick, creamy like a carrot soup would be. I would call it a stew if it was me. Anywho. No, stew maybe has to have meat and potatoes. I don't know. This doesn't matter. I'm all over the place again.
She really is. I feel like we need to put a seatbelt on her chair so she doesn't like get up and flee.
So they're eating soup and Chloe sees like a tooth or an eyeball. Something.
I thought it was blood.
No, there was like something floating in the soup too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in fairness, we were eating dinner. So Jill and I were still eating our food.
I think I had just finished.
Yeah, and there's blood in the soup, so I pretty much focused on my plate.
Yeah, there was something floating in there. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
So Chloe freaks out, throws her soup on the floor, and walks away. And the husband's just like, I guess she didn't want soup. And you're just like, all right. And the husband's like, I'll clean it up. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And you can just tell that Jess is like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And the next day, Jess is talking to her husband, Ben, and watching Chloe through the window and expressing some of these same frustrations. And pretty shortly after that, Ben announces that he has to go on a business trip, conveniently exiling him from the goings-on.
Yeah.
And kind of isolating mom and daughter in this big old house together.
Yeah. It was interesting to me because Jess is like mad at him for going on this trip. Like she's like, you promised no more trips. And he's like, I can't help it. And they don't explain that at all. So other than, I mean, maybe she just wants him around for the Chloe thing. But
yeah,
I mean, it wasn't really explained why it was so important that he not go. And then he left and everything was fine.
The Chloe thing. Like, I think she was just like, don't leave me alone. Like,
what if I can't take care of her? Yeah. Okay.
There's a lot at stake here.
Yeah.
But he leaves.
So then they go to bed that night,
mm-hmm.
and she hears crying in the middle of the night and thinks it's Chloe. So she goes to investigate and finds this woman in a black dress with red hair pulled back in a bun, and she's crying and just standing in the hallway.
Facing away from Jess.
And she turns around, and Jess is just like, who are you? Why are you in my house? Mm-hmm. Right? And she turns around, and she just is crying and holding a knife.
Mm-hmm.
And Jess is like, what are you doing? And she slits her own throat.
Yep.
And just falls to the ground. And as she falls to the ground, she takes on Jess's face.
And then starts crazy rapidly decaying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like turns into a skeleton and kind of melts away.
Pretty solid effects here, I have to say. Yeah.
It was creepy.
Yeah.
And then Jess wakes up.
Mm-hmm.
So she had this nightmare. And she just like wakes up and Chloe's standing there next to her bed. And she's just like, because nobody wants like somebody to watch them sleep.
Oh yeah. Unexpected person in the room right when you wake up from a nightmare? No.
Nope.
Get new sheets.
Yep. Not okay. So Chloe's like, I heard you screaming. I just came to check on you. And she's like, oh, I just had a bad dream. It's fine. It's totally fine. And they end up falling asleep in the bed together, which was kind of a nice moment. Like, it was a comfort to both of them, I think. They were both scared.
Yeah. And Chloe gets her mom to tell her what the bad dream was, and Jess does.
Oh, yeah.
And right after Jess explains her bad dream, Chloe explains that there was a red-headed witch lady that they called Ginger, who lived near the children's home, and that she's pretty convinced that the witch lady took Michael, when they were little kids, and that this witch woman killed Danny and is coming after Chloe.
Yeah.
And Jess is like, no, it was just a bad dream. None of that is real. And they fall asleep in bed together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then the next morning, the model shows up. And she's like, did you forget that I'm supposed to be here? And she's like, no, let's go. And totally brushes it off, and they go to start working. So after a minute, Chloe shows up, and she's like, hey, do you want some coffee? And Tira freaks out.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I didn't know she was here. I don't want her here. I'm leaving, basically.
Yep. Yeah.
And just beelines it out of there.
Yep.
And Jess chases her down and is like, what is wrong with you?
Tira tells Jess, be careful. You can't help her. She belongs to something else. She's marked by something terrible.
Jess is just like, what? And Tira leaves.
Yep.
So then a little while later, a detective shows up because Danny is missing. And so he came to talk to Chloe because they're best friends and wants to know if she knows anything.
Yeah, this is Detective Broadman, played by Nick Moran.
Yes. And so he explains that when Chloe was little, the woman that Chloe had told her about the night before with, the witch woman, as they call her and her friend Danny used to knock on her door every night because they thought that she took their friend Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were hassling her, knocking on her door every night, and it drove her crazy, and she killed herself.
Yep. Which is super dark and sad.
And he's like, I never found any evidence, and there were no other leads. Like, there was nothing I could do.
Yeah.
He's like, 90% of the time, it's someone who knows the kids that takes them.
Mm-hmm.
The mom is basically just like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. So then she finds Chloe, and Chloe starts explaining about this research she did on this witch, and starts explaining, like, she takes someone, and then you have to kill yourself to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Or do something horrible to somebody else.
Yeah, so basically this demon, Baba Yaga, who pops up a lot in films. Like in John Wick, they call John Wick Baba Yaga.
Yeah. I'm
pretty sure that in Ant-Man, in the new Ant-Man and the Wasp, that Baba Yaga is like he keeps whispering, like, it's Baba Yaga. Anyway, Baba Yaga is pretty popular in movies lately, it seems like. But in this film, the lore that they reference says that Baba Yaga is a demon that has limited power in the real world. And so she requires the help of a living woman that's kind of like her slave. And this living slave bears this kind of interesting looking eye crescent looking mark on her skin that ties her to Baba Yaga and has to do Baba Yaga's bidding. Until she either kills herself to set herself free, or she tricks another person into doing something so evil that she's able to pass the mark onto another person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of those key horror movie conversations that you're like, gee whiz, I wonder
Noted.
how this movie is.
Yeah, exactly. So they're standing there talking, and there's a mirror off to like the left side. And they're standing in front of this mirror talking, and Chloe looks over and sees the witch's reflection instead of her mom's reflection. And she's just like, yikes, and runs. So
creepy.
And you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did a really good job of creeping you out, and every reflection was creepy. You were scared of every shadow in this movie.
It had such great atmosphere, and they just kept building on it more and more. Yeah.
To the point that I screamed. So that's coming. So then the mom and Chloe are reminiscing about, Chloe's like, hey, when I was little, didn't you paint animals on my wall when you had a party with all your friends? And she's like, oh yeah, I remember that. And she's like, there was a turtle above my bed and I loved it. And her mom's kind of smiling, but kind of looks confused at the same time.
And super apprehensive.
And she's just like, yeah, I remember. And then Chloe's like, I didn't like the bear you painted behind my door, though. That was scary. Do you remember the bear? And she's like, no. And Chloe's like, probably because you were high.
Mm-hmm.
And her mom explains, like, I was really sick back then. And she's like, I hate to call it that, but I was really sick back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so sorry that I couldn't take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
she's like, I tried to get you back and they wouldn't let me.
Yeah. It took her this whole time to get her life in a place where she could even try.
Mm-hmm. Chloe's basically like, sure. She's not buying it. They're like in the studio having this conversation. And the mom goes to put some supplies away and turns around and the statues have all turned and they're facing Chloe. Mm-hmm. And her mom like freaks out and she's like, you can't move them like that. They're delicate. What are you doing? And Chloe just looks horrified. She's like, I didn't do it. And her mom's just standing there kind of confused. And Chloe just says, I thought I'd be safe here. And like walks away.
Yeah. And I love that we didn't see the statues move on their own. You just kind of heard the scraping sound.
Yeah.
And so at this point, it's kind of ambiguous on... You understand Jess's reluctance to believe that Chloe didn't move them.
For sure. Well, and part of you is still trying to figure out what's happening, right? And so part of me is like, is she just being a bratty kid and like making stuff happen? And then you're like, well, she can't make her mom have dreams or like see weird reflections and, anyway.
Yeah.
But I also laughed because moving statues is such like a horror movie trope that happens way too much that I was just like, there was a lot of Stephen King nods in this movie.
Oh, so many.
And so this was one of those for me, right? Like the statues in the maze. The
hedge animals.
That move around. And so that was interesting for me as well. And then there was an animal outside in a hedge, like at the same time. And so, I enjoyed that reference to The Shining.
Definitely. Well, and after having watched that Hole in the Ground movie, lately I'm now second guessing, are they crazy? Like what's really going on? Are they ever going to...
Which, honestly, I always sort of have in the back of my mind when I watch a horror movie. Like, they are just crazy because I think that's a fun twist.
Right after that, the social worker lady from the children's home comes.
Right.
And she's talking to Jess, trying to get a feeling for how things are going. And Jess is like, it's great. Chloe's so helpful. She's actually helping me deliver some boxes to my studio right now. And it shows Chloe carrying a box into the studio, and the studio is totally fine. And Chloe leaves to go get another box. Jess walks into the studio with the social worker right after that, and the studio is just destroyed. Everything is messed up.
And she immediately yells at Chloe, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And Chloe's like, I didn't do it, and like storms off.
The social worker takes a dim view of this exchange.
Yeah.
And on the floor in red paint, "She's mine" is written. And
I missed that.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm sure the social worker saw that and was like, this is very unusual. Mm-hmm. So, and I liked that this time, because they showed us that Chloe was just in the studio and it was fine, that confirmed something's going on. There's some supernatural stuff here. Yeah.
Right. So then the mom, I can't even talk about the scene. Will you describe the scene, please?
Oh, does it make you sad?
No, it makes me scared.
Oh, okay.
Are we talking about a different scene?
Well, so because Jess had just freaked out at Chloe is packing a suitcase.
Oh, that part. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Sorry,
Jess is like, Jess is like, are you leaving? And Chloe's like, well, you don't want me here anyway. And there's this really sweet scene where Jess is slowly unpacking Chloe's things, sending a very clear message. Don't leave. I want you here.
That's right.
And she's explaining that the hardest part of being a mom isn't diapers and you're up all night crying and everything. She says it's this unexpected amount of love that no one prepares you for, this overwhelming tidal wave of connection to your child. And this was one of those scenes where I was just so impressed by Katie Sackhoff. The emotion that she was sharing here was wonderful. And she's telling Chloe, I loved you from the minute you were born. I loved you while I was sick. I loved you when I gave you up. And I've never stopped loving you no matter how far you are.
Thousands of miles away.
Yeah. And she's like, and I love you right now. So Jess decides to stay.
Mm-hmm. And then the scary thing.
So this is right after that is where everything just ratchets up to a 10. And it's so good. So I don't want to
hits the fan, folks.
Yeah. So after this heartwarming exchange, Chloe falls asleep on the couch in the living room. And Jess is sort of standing in the kitchen watching her daughter. And then the outside lights, all the floodlights that light up their front yard, they all switch on. So she sees all this light coming in from the window. And when she goes to look, that weird hedge animal Jill was just talking about has a piece of red fabric wrapped around its head. So Jess goes out to investigate with a knife in her hand.
Because it's weird. Someone's been in their yard and, like, tripped the lights and messed with their lawn animal.
Yeah. So she goes out there, and the whole time she's walking slowly to the hedge animal, you can see darkness behind her except for the lit-up window where you can see Chloe sleeping on the couch. And I was looking back and forth like, what did I watch? Do I watch Jess or watch Chloe?
I know.
I was relieved when they changed the shot so you couldn't see behind Jess anymore. So...
yeah.
Jess gets up and she's close enough to the statue that she can reach out to it, and right then all the lights dim to blackness. So now she's in the dark outside.
Yeah.
And it switches back to Chloe, who's awakened in the house by some thumps and some weird sounds in the house. So she gets up to look for her mom. Jess, meanwhile, is now, like, sort of edging half backwards back towards the house, and she keeps looking back over her shoulder towards the hedge animal with the scarf on its face.
She doesn't know how to keep herself safe at this point. Like, everything is not okay.
It was such a good, relatable scene.
Yep.
So, when she gets back to the house, the front door is wide open, the vestibule door is wide open, there's definitely something weird going on, and... she goes to go through the front door, and it shuts on her and slams on her hand and injures it horribly. And she has to kind of battle her way into the house. But as she's preparing to do that, Chloe is wandering around this old, freaking, scary British farmhouse
with
by
way
herself.
Too many staircases and endless hallways and mirrors.
Yeah. And they did these awesome things where every time she turned her back, something would move behind her. Mm-hmm. And it was the same woman from Jess's dream with the red hair that had slit her own throat. She would just sort of like skitter across the background real quick. And it was so good.
Or just like be standing there.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So
it was not okay. It was to the point where every single shadow on the wall made me freak out.
Yeah.
And even though it wasn't moving, because sometimes the darkness would just move and it would be this woman behind her, you know?
Yeah.
And so every time there was any shadow, any darkness, I was like, oh no. I couldn't handle it. I was like hiding my face.
Yeah,
and
this is where I looked at you and you had like your pen in your hand and your hands up by your face.
Because I was just like, I can't handle it.
So at one point, Chloe is standing in a doorway and there's a window with, like a door with a window in it behind her. And a light comes on in that window and the shadows are kind of moving behind it. And then there's an sudden jump scare with the witch lady's face right by Chloe's face. And that's where Jill was like, ah!
I did. I jumped and I was just like, ah! I couldn't handle it. Yeah.
It was amazing.
It was intense
so
and
good.
Amazing. So if you watch no more of this movie, watch that scene.
Also during this scene, there's another pretty obvious nod toward The Shining, because to get into the house, Jess has to get an axe and break down the door. And the way that the camera follows her movements, where she's hitting the door, it's very much Jack Torrance using an axe to get into the caretaker's apartment. So
absolutely. So Chloe screams when I screamed. Jess finally catches up to her. They're together. They decide to take all the doors off of every room in the house and burn them in the yard.
Yeah, but Jess didn't see anything.
No.
Chloe saw Baba Yaga crawling toward her, and Jess didn't see it. When she goes in the room, there's nothing. But she still is a supportive mother, and she says, you know what? If you're terrified of the doors in this house, let's burn them all.
Right? Like, she's just like, cool, no more doors. I'm good. And they have this massive bonfire in the yard where they burn all the doors, which was pretty fun.
I love the way they filmed that scene, too, because they had the bonfire going and the two women standing in front of it, and they're lit by red light, and there's this super 80s synth sound going on. It felt like something from a John Carpenter movie.
Yep. They kind of make it through the night, and the next day they're standing in the foyer.
Ooh, K-Rish.
They're standing in the foyer, and the front door opens first.
Yeah, so there wasn't a front door there.
That's right.
They burned the front door the night before.
And it's like a burned front door.
It's the door from the witch lady's house down to like the demon head knocker.
Oh my gosh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
And it creaks open, and then Chloe's floating in the air and gets thrown against like a china hutch full of glass or whatever, thrown against the wall. And Jess is grabbing her, and the whole time she's screaming, "Help me, Mom," even though through the whole movie she just called her Jess.
Yeah.
And it was really heartbreaking. The whole time you're like, no, help her.
And Jess is trying.
Yeah. And so they finally get her, everything stops, and they're like, all right, let's get out of here.
Yeah, and once the wind stops, the witch lady's door is gone. And it's back to no door.
Yep. They GTFO and hop in the car and go to find
Tira.
I'm never going to get that name right. Not Tiana, not Tiara. Getting it. Tira. She pretty much is like, nope, I'm not helping you. And like real mad at Chloe the whole time. And Chloe kind of storms off. And she tells Jess, like, if you want to save her, you have to, like, she blamed the witch died. And at this point is when I started getting suspicious of Tira, because she knew way too much about the whole situation. Like, even if she was a clairvoyant, which they sort of implied, she just knew way too many details. Yeah. So she says she falsely accused and, like, says the woman's name. I can't remember what the woman's name is.
Yeah, but Mary something.
Falsely accused Mary. She killed herself. So you have to figure out who really took Michael. Like, she knew names. She knew what happened. It was really...
Yeah, plus it was weird, too, because they had very clearly planted that seed earlier that what you're dealing with is Baba Yaga, and Baba Yaga has, like, a human slave person, like a human assistant. And then this Tira woman is like, no, it's not Baba Yaga. You're way off base. It's just a vengeful spirit. And after all of the magic and mystery of some ancient Eastern European witch lady who wants just a vengeful ghost.
I know. And you're just like, wah, wah.
Yeah. So at this point, you're thinking, she better be lying, because otherwise this will be lame.
Right? Well, and pretty much from this point on.
This is definitely where things started getting a little confusing.
Turning point for me.
Because Tira tells Jess she wants your help, so if you listen hard enough, she'll guide you. So Jess goes back and gets in her car and finds a piece of a statue's face on her dashboard and follows that clue back to her studio where all the clay and all the mess is. And she goes into her studio and there's like a red piece of fabric similar to what was on the head outside in the hedge animal. It's on the floor and it's moving. Yeah. This was totally creepy. Dread. Yeah. I didn't want her to look under it, but I needed her to look under it. Yeah. It was just birds. Like flapping birds. But for some reason, in her studio, underneath this red piece of fabric, there's a police case file.
A box full of case files for the woman and Michael.
Yeah. It's Michael's missing persons report. It's a suspect record for the witch lady.
And a flash drive.
And a flash drive, which has a recording of an interrogation between Detective Broad, whatever, and the witch lady.
Yeah. And the whole time you're just like, how and why?
Yeah. For a minute, we weren't sure where she was. It took seeing the stained glass windows to make us realize she's in the studio.
Oh, she's in her studio.
Because it made no sense that this would be there. And in retrospect, I now know how it got there. Baba Yaga's human assistant is pulling strings to make that be there. Yeah. So that's what it's doing there. Because I was like, how the F did Baba Yaga, like, get a hold of this, like... Or this vengeful ghost or whatever it's supposed to be.
Right. Like, where... Did they break into a police station? How is this happening? Yeah. So Jess decides she just needs to investigate the whole thing, with the box. So... She goes to the home. She's looking for Chloe. And they're just like, she spent the night on the streets. She stays here now. Yeah. Like, you don't get her anymore.
Yep.
And
they explain that the detective is who brought Chloe in that morning.
And Jess is looking at pictures on the wall, and it's the detective with a bunch of the kids at the home.
From way back,
including Michael, the boy who went missing.
And the children's aid workers are like, yeah, the detective has been volunteering here for 10 years. He's really supportive of the kid. He's always around. And Jess realizes that clearly the detective is who murdered Michael, and he's been covering his tracks this whole time. Dun, dun, dun.
So she runs up the stairs and grabs Chloe, and it's just like, Chloe! And she runs to her, and she's like, let's get out of here. And they run out of the home.
Mm-hmm.
As they leave the home, Chloe is standing on top of those doors that, like...
They're access doors.
Right?
To get to, like, underground electrical things in big cities.
I went in one when I did the underground tunnel tour in Portland, right? Yeah. Like, it's just the big metal door that you pull open, and there's usually stairs underneath or whatever. So Chloe's standing there, and all of a sudden it has this, like, oh no.
And then 2 knocks.
And the doors just cave in and suck her in.
Yep.
And before Jess can get there, like, Jess pulls open the door and there's nothing there, right? Like, it's just normal. And she's just like, well, crap.
Yeah.
Like, and that part I was just like, all right.
Yeah. So she's taken through, like, a magic portal, apparently.
Yeah.
And right before that happened, Jess had called her friend Tira again to say, we need to talk to you some more. There's more information, whatever. And Tira's like, I'll meet you at the park. It's really close by. And then hangs up. And then the camera kind of, like, hung out on Tira for a while.
Yeah.
Without showing us where she was. It reminded me of The Simpsons, which, again, was on my mind for this whole entire episode. Of when Homer's like, no, we'll make the audience know that the dog is the one who did it because we'll zoom in on him and have him looking all shifty-eyed while we play suspicious music.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So then Jess goes to the haunted house because she's like, I have to get my daughter back. She throws a rock through a window, which I'm pretty sure the first time they went, there was a bunch of knocked out windows anyway. But whatever. So she throws a rock through a window. She crawls in. They zoom in too much on rusty nails sticking out of a board.
He's got a board with a nail in it.
Yeah. And Caryn was just like, oh no. I mean, you all know where that's coming, right? They zoom in too much on something dangerous. It's going to come into play.
Yeah.
So she crawls into the window, steps directly on the board, screaming. Her foot is bleeding. And police show up and arrest her and pull her away.
Yep. And as they're pulling her out of the house, she sees the door with the knocker on it. And she gets out of their grasp and runs up and knocks twice on the door. So now she has awakened and summoned the thing within the house.
Mm-hmm. She's taken into an interrogation room. And she's interrogated by the detective. And she ends up turning it around on him and questioning him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, why were you with all the kids? Are you the one who took Michael? Where did you take him? Why can't you? Like, all of this stuff. And you can tell he is just blindsided.
This was another scene where I was like, dang, she can act. Because the way that they shot this, she's acting straight to camera. And she is so emotional and distraught and accusatory straight into the camera. So she's not looking at another actor who can, like, respond to her.
Yeah.
That has to be so hard.
Yeah.
And same to him. When they flip it around on him, he's acting straight to the camera, too, just looking completely
horrified.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can tell that he's at that moment where, okay, I'm not in control of this interrogation, and he leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's just like, this isn't working. I gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
And he leaves the room. And she does this horrible thing where she starts picking at the wound on her foot.
Ugh, I had to hide inside my sweater. So
and the
gross.
whole time, Kelly and I were just like, what is she doing? And she's just picking at her foot and squeezing it and picking at her foot and squeezing it. And you're like, what is happening right now? And just, like, covering her fingers in it. And the whole time you're just like, she's trying to dig something out of her foot. Like,
yeah,
it's crazy. And then you realize she's over a sink and she's making a pool of blood, and she puts her fingers in it and starts painting on the wall.
Yep, she's writing with it.
Yeah.
And Bob, dude, get a pen.
So she paints on the wall. The lights flash.
And you don't see, they don't show you what she painted.
No.
We were all throwing stuff around. Jill thought she was maybe painting the symbol that marked the servant of Baba Yaga.
I mean, we had nothing.
Yeah.
We had no idea. The lights flash and the door opens into a magical land of Narnia forest. And she just goes right on in.
Yeah.
So whatever she painted sent her straight to this Narnia forest, and she just wanders right in. Yep. So then the lights are flashing in the rest of the police station, and the detective goes in to find her. The place is empty, and she had painted with her blood, "You know where to find me."
Apparently signaling to the vengeful spirit, hey, look, I'm trying to help you clear your name by tricking him into returning the semen of crime, I guess.
I don't know. I got nothing.
So transport me to a magic land?
It made no sense.
Yeah. So at this point, the very next thing that they show is like Chloe inside of a weird old medieval cage. And at that moment, Jill threw her notebook on the couch and said, this movie makes no sense.
Because, what? She's like in a magical forest, and then Chloe's dangling in a cage like it's Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
And they're going to eat her for dinner.
Like, are they in hell? Are they in...
Why is Chloe still alive?
Yeah.
And Chloe's friend Danny is like leading the mom through the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And like you just get flashes of him.
Mm-hmm.
And the forest also made me think of the Twilight movie. And I asked Caryn if this is where he makes her say vampire.
Yeah.
So just had to throw that out there, because when you watch it, you're all going to go, yep.
Yeah. And if you're not going to watch it, it helps you picture exactly what's going on. Yeah.
Moss-covered rocks, everything. Yeah. While Chloe is in the cage, Michael, the missing boy, like pops up way too close to her face.
Yeah.
And she's just like, Michael, is that you? And the witch grabs him and eats him.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, what? Is Michael alive? Why is he getting eaten now?
Yeah, why is he
getting eaten? Not getting eaten before? Now? And how is he still a little boy? And none of this is explained.
I did like the shot where Baba Yaga eats Michael, though, because...
Yeah, it was well done.
Yeah, because they don't show you violence towards the boy necessarily. They show a pair of feet dangling, and you can see Baba Yaga's, like, weird, skinny, blackened, cloven feet, and you can see blood running down Michael's feet. Mm-hmm. So you get a very clear image of what's happening, and it was a very interesting-looking scene. But.
And it was not torturous to watch, like Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
It was over really quickly, and it was just silly, and the whole time you were a little confused, so It was fine.
So right after that, Jess finds Chloe and lets her out of the cage, and they sort of are like running away and crawling away, and Baba Yaga's chasing them.
Through a tunnel.
And Baba Yaga like rounds the corner of the tunnel, and she's sort of backlit, and you see a weird boob. So weird.
It was the weirdest looking boob. So she's like a naked woman on all fours, right?
But she's really emaciated and skinny and, and inhuman looking and elongated.
And so the boob didn't even look like a boob, and we had to laugh at it a lot.
Yeah, it kind of looked like a sock full of nickels. Like, hanging off of a board with a nail in it. It was weird.
It just looked weird. And just honestly didn't need to be there. And was kind of distracting from the whole tunnel chase scene. Where like, I think you're supposed to feel tense, but we just laugh. Well, and like they're crawling through the tunnel and she's behind them. And then all of a sudden she's in front of them. And you're just like, what?
Well, and again, and then, all the fear here was totally undercut by what in the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Just feeling
Why are
so
they in
confused.
a tunnel? Where did the tunnel come from? Where does the tunnel go? Why did they just crawl into a tunnel? All of these things. So then they get out of the tunnel and they open a door and they just like knew they were in the house, the witch house. And so they open the door and it's like this whole huge effort to get through the door. And in the meantime, the detective had shown up and gone inside the house.
And is now by the cage.
So, like, had he never gone in the house before? Because he said that they could find no evidence, but now there's a cage and dead children and the magical land of Narnia and the tunnels and the witch lady and none of that before. So the girls get out. The detective is trying to get out, and they won't help him.
Mm-hmm.
And they let him die.
Yep. Jess and Chloe leave the haunted house.
Yep.
And Ben gets home to a doorless house that's a total shambles.
Totally destroyed. And he's freaking out and he's screaming, and you see movement, and he turns and he's like, what's going on? Where's Jess? Where's Chloe?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're like, oh, he's talking to somebody he knows.
Yeah.
And that just confirms to me what is about to be revealed to us.
Mm-hmm.
That Tira is covered in a plastic suit and just killed Ben.
Yeah.
So she's carrying out the evidence box and opens her trunk, and there's a dead body of Ben wrapped in plastic in her trunk, and she just tosses the box in there, gets in there, and drives away.
Yeah, so clearly she had put the evidence box in the studio to manipulate Jess into doing what she wants. So Jess and Chloe also arrive back home. They see Ben's suitcase, but they can't find him.
So they call him, and they're just like, hey, honey, we're home, we're okay. Because I think, like a normal person, she's like, oh, crap, he came home to this disaster. He thinks something happened to us. He's off looking for us. Yeah. Or, something normal. He has no idea that there's a witch haunting them. and air quotes.
Chloe is saying she feels bad about what happened to the poor detective. And Jess is like, don't feel bad. He got his comeuppance. He got what he deserved. And she explains to Chloe, the detective murdered Michael and was covering his tracks this whole time.
Chloe's like, no, he was a good guy and he took care of us always. And he's good people, and like explains to him, that's not what happened. I saw the witch take him. Like, I know what happened. And she was just like, oh no.
Yep. She runs back into the billiards room where they had been looking at the Baba Yaga stuff before, finds the picture of the mark, remembers their earlier conversation, and they show Tira's mark disappear from her chest. And then the necklace that she gave Jess way earlier lights up, kind of, and burns Jess and marks her. And then suddenly in the corner, it's the old wooden door from the witch lady's house, and it opens, and Baba Yaga's on the other side, and everything's all red and scary, and the movie ends.
Yep. Yeah. And wah, wah.
Yeah, I didn't love the ending.
Not at all. I feel like it was so good, and then so bad.
I think...
Like, I couldn't even retell you that scene that scared me so bad.
Yeah, because she was so scared of it. And will be scared later.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to sleep tonight. If they move the doctor to scare me when I get home, I'm going to punch somebody. So,
I think the reason that I struggled with it is because the movie hadn't really set any expectations for me that they would be traveling to a different world.
Yes.
It felt more like, our real actual world where something paranormal and intrusive was encroaching on real life. And that's a really different feeling than we're going to Witch Lady Island. I don't know what that place was supposed to be, but
yep.
I think that's why it didn't work for me, is because I was so blindsided by that part. And they'd been pretty careful to plant a whole bunch of other seeds all the way through. And I felt unbalanced by that sudden shift.
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere. I agree with you. It worked in the Insidious movies, but they sort of build up to that. Mm-hmm. Instead of this movie where it was just like, we have to go in this other dimension and save everybody, but only the people that we can save. We can't save Danny or Michael, but we can save Chloe. Which made no sense to me. They didn't even try to
save Danny.
Nope.
He didn't get eaten or anything. Is he still there?
No idea.
So, it was weird.
It was weird.
But as Jill and I were remembering the first 2/3 of the movie, I was like, man, we're going to get to the end of this and I'm going to have to bump up that fright factor. And then we just spent the last half hour describing the part that didn't work. And I'm like, yeah, no, 3 is fair.
Yeah, nope, 3 is totally fine. And by the end, I'm like, I'm not even scared anymore because...
Yeah.
And this movie did a really good job, because you and I have talked before about how sometimes they show you too much of the monster and then it's not scary anymore. And this was not the case in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, the way they used her worked every time.
Yeah, totally.
Every time you saw her, it worked. Even in the end when she came out of the door, it was creepy.
Yeah.
Even though none of the rest of that scene worked. But her, throughout the whole movie, was consistently creepy. Mm-hmm. And I really, really enjoyed that and appreciated that. But then the story was so disjointed and, okay, now we're going to throw this in.
Yeah.
And then now we're going to throw you over here and then over here. And it just, there was no flow and it didn't work.
Yeah, I wish that they had done all of the same things except for the having to go rescue Chloe from the Shadowlands. So. Yeah. But again, I still do totally recommend watching this movie.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was enjoyable for the most part, so.
Yeah.
But Jill's sugar crash is wearing off. She hasn't freaked out about something through the window in a good long while. So I think
the curtain.
As always, if you want to hang out with us online, we're everywhere at Scream Girl Squad. We'd love to talk to you about what you thought about this movie. If you want to tell us what you think about us, you can do that by rating us on Apple Podcasts.
And let us know if you have any recommendations, or if you watched this movie and have different opinions than us. We want to hear about it. We want to know what you liked or didn't like about this movie.
For sure.
For sure.
Especially if you can explain something to us that will make us feel less confused.
Yeah. I would really, really appreciate that.
On that note, we're going to go to bed.
Yes, please.
Thank you for listening to Scream Girl Squad.
Bye.